Today, we're going over some, what I just call emergency trauma care, which is not necessarily like any specific kind of a term or anything. What it just simply means is that, you know, the way I see it is, you're in a pinch, you need to take care of yourself or take care of somebody else before you get to professional medical help. So that might be a car accident, that might be a gunshot wound, that could be a knife wound, could be a variety of different things. But what we do know is that, you know, time is of the essence, and we're losing out on time quickly, so we want to make sure that we address a particular injury as quickly as possible, and we know that it's a temporary fix, that we want to get to professional medical care. So I don't want to lead anybody. Look, we're not going to walk away like General Hospital today, okay? What we want to do is have some good, solid understanding of what's going on, and you know, be able to I hate the term self-medicate, but self-medicate or medicate somebody else. So let's get Brian introduced up here. This is my friend Brian. Brian, say hi.
Hello.
All right, awesome. So Brian is a former combat medic and a lot of years of experience. This is what he does. This is what he does. And now he's a part of Chicago PD's SWAT team, which I think probably keeps you pretty busy.
Yeah,
good. And so Brian, give us a minute to tell us about yourself here, man.
Adult life, if you want to call it that, was the Marine Corps, 1988 to 1994. I don't want to know how old you guys were when that happened, but I was in the Marine Corps overseas for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Got out in 94. Just seemed like a good time to get out of the military with the cutbacks and everything. Moved to Chicago and then missed being in uniform almost immediately. So jumped into the Army Reserves, went to medic school because I thought that sounded cool. Did that for a few years, and then I actually wound up falling in love with medicine. I never intended to do medicine as a career, but I really loved it. Became an EMT basic on a private ambulance, bounced around doing that for a while. In 1998, I went to paramedic school at Loyola University in Maywood, and went to the fire academy almost immediately after, and bounced around the western suburbs for a little while as a firefighter paramedic. Got to teach at Loyola. I still am affiliate faculty out there. They're still my home port for all my medical stuff. And then in 2004, the Chicago Fire Department called. So I became a single role paramedic on Ambulance 10. It was the third busiest ambulance in the United States the year that I was on it. And I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So the Chicago Police Department called very shortly thereafter. Went to the Chicago Police Department. It was kind of Joe Average beat police officer in the 15th District. Then the nation being at war in 2005, I enlisted in the Illinois Army National Guard and went to Iraq very promptly. I went with the 1st of the 178 Infantry. I was over there 06, 07 during the surge, which really kind of put the hook in me for tactical medicine. Got back, for some reason they decided to put me in the academy. I got to teach almost everything you got to do in the academy. Every kind of weapon system the Chicago Police Department employs, I got to train, I got to do some tactics, I got to do some medicine, I got to do some mentoring. It was a great opportunity. But then about 3 years ago, the SWAT team decided they wanted to change how we did its tactical medicine, kind of move it up with the times. So got requested to come over there. There I went. I'm not one of the operators. I am their medic. I do all the stuff that they do. I go with them on their warrants and their jobs, but medicine is my prime focus. And the reason I talk about that is to give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from. I've done the civilian medicine, I've done military medicine, I've done law enforcement medicine, and I am the medical team leader for the SWAT team right now, which keeps me pretty busy with my EMTs, my paramedics, and my guys and everything else. So that's pretty much who I am, where I'm coming from on that. So let me talk first about what this class isn't going to be. Just to let you know that when I teach this block of instruction, it's usually an 8-hour block, and that's the minimum amount of time. Our SWAT officer candidates, when they get their welcome aboard package where we teach them tactical combat casualty care, it's a 24-hour, it's a 3-day class. So this is going to be a 50,000 foot. This is not going to be down in the weeds doing a lot of stuff. If you have questions, more than willing to answer them either now or again if you want to hit me up on the page or whatever else. Again, we kind of talked about this a little bit. If you want to friend me, prepare to be offended if you follow my feed, but if you want to make me a Facebook friend with me, there's questions I can answer for you on the message system or whatever else. I'm always willing to do that. So understand that's what it's going to be. I'm going to be talking like Daffy Duck on crack for the next hour or so, trying to get through this block, trying to cover everything we need to get covered. Another thing this is not going to be a first aid class. I'm not going to teach you how if little Timmy stubs his toe or something like that. There are a lot of great classes out there. I would strongly advise that you follow on your education. If you want to go to an American Heart Association or an American Red Cross first aid class, It's excellent. There's actually one out there now called the BCON, or bleeding control class. It's kind of like CPR for trauma, another great class. So what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be primarily military-oriented or law enforcement-oriented trauma, but it's going to be the same stuff that you're going to go. The good news about the human body is it doesn't really care what hurt it, whether it's a bullet, a knife, a car, whatever it is, a glass window. The human body reacts the same way. So I know a lot of you folks are knife practitioners. I'll talk about this stuff, but everything we're going to talk about today completely applies to those kind of wounds as well. So that's just some stuff to keep in mind as far as what the class is and what it isn't. You don't walk out of it with any kind of certification. I kind of like the Mr. Miyagi thing. You know, my belts are, I got a canvas belt from Sears. It cost me $3.99. In the real world, it doesn't make any difference what certification level that you hold or whatever. It's whether you have mentally prepared yourself to execute that skill and then taking it to the next step. Bought the equipment, trained, got further stuff, continue with it. It's like any other weapon system out there. It's kind of my universal field theory. Any profession that requires you to operate under stress is a different animal entirely. Whether you're a pilot, you're a scuba diver, you're a skydiver, you're a knife person, you're a professional in the profession of arms. All these things require a different skill process than maybe you would need to learn how to program a computer or fix a carburetor. Those are awesome skills, but they're not replicated in the world that we live in, which is that 140 beats per minute, looking through a drinking straw, blood getting drawn away from our core. So we now have problems doing things. So again, this is going to be something where this is going to be, hopefully will whet your appetite to continue your training process and continue your education. I'm going to talk about a certain amount of gear. We talked about what the stuff was. We'll go through what each and every one of those things are. I use these. This is what I carry on the department. This is what I would use on my family. However, that may be not what you want to carry. So my recommendation is you don't drink my Kool-Aid. Go ahead, do your research. Figure out what works best for you and go ahead and buy that. I'm not a gear shill. I don't get paid by any of these people. This is just what I've used in the past and what I trust my life, my guys' lives, and my family's life for. So again, make up your own mind on that kind of thing. So what we're going to talk about from here is what I'm going to talk about, the skill set. If you're able to master what we've got on the ground right here, if you can master that kit, you're going to be able to fix the vast majority of injury patterns that you're going to find from most traumas. And again, this is not one of those things we're going to caveat this with if it's a car accident or dad fell off the roof working on it. There's going to be some things you're not going to want to move people for due to cervical spinal injuries and things like that. Again, this is going to be mostly geared around gunshot wounds, stabs, and things along those lines. One important concept, though, is that we prioritize life over limb. So if you did come up on a car accident where somebody was bleeding to death, normally you don't move somebody out of a vehicle, you let medical professionals do that. If the person's going to bleed to death otherwise, now you have to start making some decisions, which ties me now, segues nicely into the idea of what can you do, because in our litigious world right now, we're sweating getting sued, legitimately so. So what can you do and what can't you do? Well, one of the good things about living in Illinois, not that there's very many of them, but one of the good things here is that we have one of the most robust Good Samaritan laws. The American Medical Association is headquartered out of Chicago. They get a lot of pull. So what our system is set up around is what would a reasonable person do under similar circumstances. So if you do any of the interventions we're going to talk about today, you're going to be good. Whip out your pocket knife, start doing some open heart cardiac massage, you're pretty much on your own. And to give you an idea what the legal standard is set at for Illinois, you have to be both willful and wanton in your acts, which means
the difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Not only do I have to do something that I know is going to hurt you, I have to do it with the intention of hurting you, and it has to be proven in a court of law. At the end of the day, almost nobody in Illinois has ever gotten successfully sued for rendering aid to somebody, doing the right thing at the right time for the right people. So don't get too crazy wrapped around the axles on, hey, can I touch this person, can I not? Medical stuff. The other thing I tell people, to be 100% honest, I carry all my medical gear in my truck, all my SWAT gears in my truck, everything else. And if my family members are hurt, I will go way past what Good Samaritan will cover me for. But that's a decision I'm willing to make based on how much I care about folks. If I stop by somebody on the side of the road, they will get what I can legally safely do for people. So that's going to be a decision that you're going to have to make on the fly as far as some of this stuff goes. So just kind of getting to some of the caveat stuff out of the way. So what we're going to talk about as far as this kit, why this kit? Why did we pick this stuff? And I'm going to tell you proudly that I've never had an original thought medically in my life. This is not Brian's scientific wild-ass way of doing things. This is all evidence-based medicine that's been validated by the military. That's the only kind of medicine I practice. I don't practice, hey, this looks cool, that looks sexy, I'm from Missouri, you gotta show me. I gotta see the data before I do stuff. So none of this stuff is things that I came up with. It's all been validated. So where did it come from? Why did we pick this particular gear? So I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna go back to Black Hawk Down. If anybody, I assume a lot of you guys have seen that movie, but the Battle of the Black Sea, back in the 90s, the U.S. decides that we need to take out Mohammed Faradid. He's causing problems in Somalia. We're going to go ahead and take him out. So we had a special operations group that was in there, Rangers, Delta, SEALs, pararescue guys, very high-speed group of guys. Unfortunately, they got complacent. And what they did was they ran the same mission profile again and again. Somalis, for all their faults, are very good fighters. They're very intelligent and they're very brave. What they were able to do was shoot down not one but two of our Black Hawk helicopters, which was one too many. And what we wound up with was we wound up some special operations guys, about 100 of them pinned on the ground in Mogadishu, in the Bakara market, which was Mohammed Faradid's backyard, and they got pinned down badly in there. Now, a lot of the press came out as it was a massive failure and we lost and whatever, and in reality, it was one of the most remarkable performances of American fighting prowess, that those special operations guys were able to hold together, hold their line, and then were able to evacuate. Pretty much everybody who went in pretty much came out, with the exception of one of the helicopter crews, and then Mike Durant got captured and a few other things. But by and large, about 100 guys held off a city overnight and were able to exfil. Price of that was 19 special operations folks. If you've ever trained with special operations folks, they are perfectionists in all things. And quite frankly, they were furious they lost that many people. And they looked at the medical system, and I'll be honest with you, in 1988, when I was in the Marine Corps, the medical training that I received was not fundamentally different than what a recruit in an Illinois volunteer infantry regiment would have received in 1861 going down south to fight the Confederates. And that's a terrible thing. So what they did was they looked back from Vietnam forward, and they tried to figure out what was killing people on the modern battlefield. What were the causes of death? And the military honestly keeps very good statistics on that, and almost nobody else does. And what they figured out, they came up with a whole chart. I won't go into the whole thing for you, but then when they looked at that, they tried to figure out what were preventable deaths. Sometimes if you get hit between the running lights with a 7.62 times 39, there's not a lot I can do for you as a medic. You get hit with a 12.7 in the chest and it blows a basketball out of your back, again, there's not much I can do for that. But what they focused on was preventable deaths on the battlefield, because one of the principles of tactical combat casualty care, which is what they called their program, was that there's three kinds of casualties. People that are going to live no matter what, people that are going to die no matter what, and a small percentage of people that can be saved with good aggressive medical training. So the three things they figured out was 60% of preventable deaths on the modern battlefield, exsanguination from extremity wounds. Just a sexy way of saying I'm bleeding out of an arm or a leg. That was 60%. 33% of people on the modern battlefield were dying of a pneumothorax, which is a sexy way of saying air in the chest cavity, and then about 6% died of airway issues. So what they figured out is if you can fix three things, 99% of people in the modern battlefield will be saved. And what you saw in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan was the absolute validation of that. A lot of the signature injuries of the war on terror, multiple amputations, traumatic brain injuries, things along those lines, the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by a surgeon in Afghanistan or Iraq is not fundamentally different than what the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese Army would do. The difference is our medicine got a lot better. We learned how to do things. So wounds that would have killed people in Vietnam are now not killing people on our battlefields. And that is not to take anything away from the guys and the gals who fought in Vietnam. They fought as bravely as any Americans did, but we, as a nation, failed them with their medical training and their medical dogma, their doctrine, and everything else. So what we figured out from the tactical combat casualty care component was those three things. I'm not going to get into the different care phases and things along those lines. That's a completely different animal. But one of the things we do talk about when something happens, the first thing you want to do, and what we train first responders all over the world is scene safety. What you want to make absolutely sure is that whatever got that person doesn't get you as well. In the military world, that transfers to the idea that if one of my guys is shot, the first thing I do is shoot the guy that shot him. I don't render any aid immediately. I'm going to deal that threat. I'm going to secure my safety that way. If there's an accident in the expressway, sometimes stopping in the middle of the expressway and jumping out of your car is not the safest thing to do. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but we want to make sure, and from a training standpoint, if there's a bunch of people with knives and they're training and one person stabs another person by accident, the first thing you want to do is control that environment. Well, when we have rifle stuff and we talk about the idea, we'll call ceasefire, 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 then everybody grounds their weapons, because the last thing I need, the only thing worse than one guy getting shot is two guys getting shot. So preventing further casualties is one of the backbones of this, and it applies all around, whether you're on the expressway, whether it's a lightning strike, whether somebody's getting bit by a dog, something along those lines. You've got to manage your safety first, because at the end of the day, if you're not part of the solution, you become part of the problem. If you wind up getting shot or you wind up getting run over, you're just another person that EMS has to come in there, take care of, and move onward. So I want you guys to keep that in mind first and foremost. A dead medic or a wounded medic is of no good to anybody, and the same thing goes with somebody with some training. And I'm sure if you've done things like some of the active shooter training, you're going to hear this theme as kind of a kind of thing that goes around all the time. So we've talked about tactical combat casualty care. Tactical emergency casualty care is the civilianized version of that. Wound patterns are going to be different. Even on the west side of Chicago, and I'm going to tell you, I saw more gunshot wounds the year I was on the ambulance 10 than I did the year I was in Iraq. But what I didn't see on the west side or the south side was people stepping on landmines, people getting hit with explosive form penetrators, people getting hit with high velocity, large caliber weapons. So again, there's a little bit of difference between what worked in Iraq. For example, clearing a room in Iraq usually involved throwing a hand grenade in there. That worked great over there. People take a dim view on doing that on the west side. So again, everything that is TCCC is not necessarily automatically applicable, which is where TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, comes in. But the fundamentals of treatment really don't change all that much. So we'll start off by talking about one of the universals of care. When you're going to see this as we talk about it, is going to be direct pressure. Something as simple as taking your hand, putting it on the wound, and putting pressure on it is going to make a whole big bunch of difference. Because the name of the game, and we kind of talked about it at the start of the process, understand this clearly. No paramedic, no ambulance, no military medic, no first responder saves the life of somebody who's been injured in the field. The end game is a trauma surgeon in an appropriate facility. That's who's going to save their life. The only job that we have as first responders is to keep that patient viable and alive, do the minimum number of interventions that we can do, and then get them handed off to further care.
Buying them time, essentially.
Time's everything.
Yeah.
Time is the fire in which casualties burn. We talk about that constantly.
Golden hour, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, the golden hour is what the EMS world uses. In fact, we cut that down to a platinum 10 minutes. Now, it's not actually evidence-based. The guy, R. Adam Crowley, just came up with that in the 60s when he wrote a white paper, which is where ambulances came from. Back in 1960, you were better off getting shot in Vietnam than you were getting into a car accident in rural Illinois.